Number 9? Mm-hmm. Oh, God. Why you want to trigger me?
Oh, I don't know. Is that Hillary?
Yeah.
Yes.
She's got another book out, so it's time to be as visible as possible 5 weeks ahead of the election.
Honestly, what is the level of selfishness that you're going to put this book out? I know the publisher says this is the time to put out the book, but maybe, just maybe, you as a politician ostensibly who cares about the outcome of this election could say, I don't know that there's anybody who I can convince to vote for Harris who's not already voting for Harris. Well, and so maybe it's not worth it for me to go out there and make myself a story.
Does she care that much?
Does she care that much? Good point. Let me be a little bit cynical and think that maybe Hillary might see the bright side of another woman losing to Donald Trump, so she can say that actually that's the reason I lost, in addition to the unfortunate stuff. I don't think she cares about people at all.
I'll tell you this, that at one point, I don't know, maybe it was in 2020, I was contemplating running for the Libertarian presidential nomination. People were floating it, and it would have been a joke. It wouldn't have been serious whatsoever, but I was thinking about doing it, and had conversations with, I think, people on the show and in other areas, and was just like, you know what? It's going to distract away from helping Bernie. It would have been fun to do, but you can make that assessment. There's no way that Hillary Clinton, somebody that it hasn't occurred to her that this could in some way inhibit the ability of Harris to win just because she becomes a story. And if not, then she's going to complete bubble. But here she is, making some wild ass claim about
conspiracy
protesters.
theory.
There were already existing groups within our country, and particularly on certain campuses like Columbia, who had talking points. They had a plan for protest and disruption, and I watched it sort of morph into something that was not student-led, even though students participated, but which had outside funding, outside direction, and I still to this day am not quite sure all that was going on with it. And a lot of students were caught up in that. And a lot of the videos on social media gave not just a one-sided view of the conflict, but a totally anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, not just pro-Palestinian view. And for me, it was distressing because, look, I have my own opinions formed over many years. I am willing to sit down and have a conversation with anybody. But it's difficult to have conversations with people who hold strong opinions with no factual and historical basis. And so in trying to talk to students, not just at Columbia, but elsewhere, I would be met with slogans. I would be met with attacks and very inflammatory language. And when I would ask, well, what about, do you know what happened in 2000 at Camp David? No. Do you know what happened in 1947? No. Do you know how difficult the relationships have been? No. Do you know that there are Arab Israelis and some are serving in the IDF? Oh, none of that. And this whole chanting of, from the river to the sea, what does that mean? What river? What sea? That's what bothered me. And I think
Yeah. So she's upset that protesters are organizing.
She's upset that protests are organizing. She's upset that protests didn't, that I don't know what conversation she had with protesters and whatnot, but she's mad. I think probably like, people around, like, in her interns
she was
in her
doing
office.
a guest lecture at Columbia. So that's what she's referring to, essentially. Although I would say that the generalities she's speaking about in terms of what the protesters knew and didn't know is probably not representative. And I'm not sure how many conversations she truly had. But
yeah, it's a lie.
Yeah, like, I mean, they had a plan for protests and disruption. I don't know. Did the civil rights marches have plans for protests and disruption? Yeah, that was the Russians. You know, I covered the Women's March, which was in response to Donald Trump getting elected because she was such a historic failure and so widely disliked by the rest of the country that she led us into a Trump term. That was well organized. There were celebrities there. It was funded by outside agitators, you could say. I mean, just because there's organization behind protests and public displays doesn't mean that it's nefarious in any way. What she's alluding to is the conspiracy theory that Nancy Pelosi has promulgated also on television, that Russia is in some way funding the protests, or that Iran is in some way funding the protests. That's the subtext behind what she's saying, which is, let's be clear, batshit insane. Like QAnon levels of derangement that should be treated with the exact same level of scorn that those conspiracy theories are treated with.
And the attempt to sort of say, like, you know, they're not qualified to be protesting because they don't know enough to be protesting. She would never make this requirement of, let's say, you know, Iranian student protests, or for that matter, any protests. This is just it's grotesque. And
I would watch leaders.
Where's
of the
Mike
Columbia.
Dukakis? Why aren't we hearing more from Michael Dukakis after he lost the election, or John Kerry? You know, where are we? Why don't we hear from these people all the time? It's just Clinton.
Also, those protesters at Columbia or any of the other universities across the country definitely have a better grasp of facts of what happened in 2000 or 1947, greater than any like politician who's complicit in all these the American policy in Israel. Which, like, I don't want to have a discussion with you. Like, I want you to be held accountable for those crimes. Like, I mean, it's just preposterous.
I mean, it's just disgusting for her to say this, like, as what's happening in Lebanon right now. It's like, I mean, over the weekend, Israel bombed a school that was a shelter and killed 22 people. No one cares. In Lebanon, they've killed hundreds, including dozens of women and children.
That school was in Gaza.
The school, that's what I meant. Right. But now that in their offensive in the north, in Lebanon, they've killed hundreds of civilians in a new, like, fresh set of attacks today. So we don't really need to know that much more than that. I don't think people need to know that much more when they see a dad holding his decapitated toddler up in the air and screaming in pain. I don't think people need to know more.
All right. Well, so much for the fun half.
That's why we didn't promise.
Pissed off today a little bit about that stuff. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, really just horrible.
Yeah.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.